So our next speaker is going to be a lot of fun because there is no presentation. He is the presentation. Oh, yes. And so he has many names. I'm not sure what Teresa calls him when she's angry, but the Lunatic Farmer is one. Wild Capitalist Farmer is another. But I'd like to introduce you guys to Joel Salatin.
Thank you, Michael. Wow, what a privilege to be here. I am the least credentialed here to speak at this ostentatious thing, like John Wayne would say. But, the privilege of being able to be at this point in the conversation today is that you got all this material to refer back to, and you can either plug it or challenge it or whatever you want to do. And so just a smidgen about me, since many of you may not know me. Our family has a farm in Virginia Shenandoah Valley. My mom and dad bought it when I was 4 years old, and it was the most worn out, gullied rock pile in the area, and today it's arguably the most abundant, productive farm in the area. We had large areas the size of this room that were nothing but rock. Today it's got 16 inches of soil on it, and I've watched that soil build in my lifetime. So I am coming from a place of abundance, thank you, Michael, and not scarcity. And what I've been able to see in my short life is absolutely incredible. When somebody says, well, you can't raise cows without vaccines and you can't raise chickens without bird flu vaccine or whatever, I'm here to tell you, oh yes, you can. Just like you can cure diabetes and autism and all sorts of other things that are supposedly incurable. The orthodox position is fundamentally flawed, generally across the board. All the regular narratives, and so here we've been talking. I really appreciate all the Blue Zone discussion, the longevity. So in our family, it's interesting. My dad died at 66. My mom is still alive at 101. Our joke in the family is that COVID happened because we took Mom's keys away in February of 2020. She was 97, and we took her car keys away, and the cosmic result of that was COVID, shutting down Mom's driving. There's one thing that you don't want to get birthday cards from local businesses as a loyal patron, and that's from the local body shop. So that's what she was starting to get, and so we thought it was time to take the keys away. My wife's dad died at 90, and her mom died at 53. So we have this really weird thing with the two of us. I'm older than Dad was when he died, and she's way older than her mom was when she died. And so we say if she's got her mother's genetics and I've got Dad's, we're already on borrowed time. And if I have Mom's and she's got her Dad's, then we're probably good to go for a while. We had an iridologist come down from New York, and he did his iridology thing on us. And my biggest concern is that I don't want to outlive her. Men don't do well, when they. And so when he looked at our iridology, I mentioned this concern that I had that to make sure that she outlives me, and he winked at me. He said, "You have nothing to worry about." So that's good. All right, let me get into the meat of this, folks. Creation pulses with sentience. If we could take an electron microscope of this room right now, we would see floating detritus of cells, microbes, pieces of things. We'd probably even find a floating segment of bird flu. And all of this life is speaking, talking, negotiating, making arrangements in the mycelia in the soil. They're coming up. I've got a pocket full of molybdenum. I'll trade you for some polysaccharides down in the glomalin of the soil, in the cathedral chocolate cake of the soil cathedrals. And our internal gut, the microbiome, has trillions of microbes that are making these exchanges every second of every day. Some quadrillion decisions per second. Think about that. A quadrillion decisions per second are being made inside of us. Is that not cool? And so what happens is that our mouth is a gateway to what our community of internal beings believes and knows about the world. And my question is, based on what we allow in our mouth, our food, based on that, what does my microbiome think about the world? What's its worldview? What does it think is going on out here? You know, we watch the news and we think we know something about the world. But the fact is that our internal microbiome decides whether the world is at war or at peace, or whether we are at stress or in quietude, whether we are in a spirit of vengeance or a spirit of forgiveness. All of that is transferred into our microbiome. One of the most interesting things on our farm, we're in the livestock business, and one of the interesting things is that we've learned from the many chefs that we have supplied over the years, is that all of our meats, our beef, poultry, chicken, all this stuff, and we all do it with GMO-free, local feeds, no vaccines, no hormones, no antibiotics, none of this stuff, on pasture, using compost instead of chemicals. But all of our stuff cooks about 15 to 20% faster than the supermarket counterpart. How can this be? And the only thing we've been able to figure is that our animals don't secrete adrenaline every second of their life. In industrial farming, factory farming, the stress factor is so huge in these factory farms that every day of life, that animal is secreting adrenaline. What do you secrete when you get stressed? This is why a 100-pound mom can pick up a Toyota off her toddler, right? And what does that do? It makes your muscles tighten up. And so in our culture, our animals and our plants that are stressed with chemicals, that are stressed with toxins, that are stressed with social confinement. Here we've been talking all day about the dysfunction of people, and I'm going to suggest our people can only be as functional as the food we eat. And when we look at our factory farms and we realize that the whole goal there is to confine things in little cubicles, feeding them a bunch of hormones, antibiotics, and not letting them have fresh air, not letting them have sunshine, and they're breathing in fecal particulate that abrades the mucous membranes and creates abrasions to let the E. coli, the salmonella, and these superbugs come right into the bloodstream, and they're stressed. Is it any wonder that our society is stressed? We now know that grass-finished beef, for example, has 300% more riboflavin than grain-finished beef. What's the importance of riboflavin? That's the calming vitamin. It's the calming one. Is it possible that our bullying in our schools and our road rage and our shooting is partly because we are eating food at which we have disrespected, dishonored, and put into a violent, stressful situation? I would suggest that we can eat happiness. Does our microbiome understand if the food that we've eaten was in a happy environment? If the pig was able to express its pigness? Or the chicken, its chickenness? You see, our culture doesn't ask that. And because it only asks, how can we grow the pig faster, fatter, bigger, cheaper? Very quickly, we quit asking that about our people. And we don't ask Tom how to make him happy. and marry how to make her happy. It is how we respect and honor the habitat that allows the phenotypical and physiological expression of the least of these that creates an ethical framework on which we hang the respect and honor of the greatest of these. And so, as we come to a discussion of how we heal, what I'm learning is that everything relates to everything. We can't just, we'll just attack this little problem over here because then it affects this over here. We've just heard a panel talking about the cyclical problem of financial and poverty, and then you have drug abuse and all these things, and it makes me want to ask, how do you help? It's a valid question. How do you help? Giving a drunk who's panhandling $1 does not help him. These are difficult questions. And in fact, our microbiome's health can never exceed the health of the food we swallow. And the food we swallow can never exceed the health of the plants and animals we raise. And the plants and animal health that we raise can never exceed the vitality of the production protocols and ultimately the soil that we have. So, the day we embrace the intentionality of what passes the gateway of our mouth becomes the day that we begin taking the pieces of the onion all the way down to the inside. All right. So, I'm debating about how many of my prepared remarks to say and how many remarks to make as a result of what I've heard today. One of the things that I'd like to respond to is, as we've listened to, it's easy, as we see some of these trajectories and where the culture's going, it's easy to be discouraged, isn't it? When we look at, this is what is leading the Maha movement. The RFK Jr. I was at the inaugural ball Monday night along with James in Washington, D.C. with RFK Jr. And there were 500 people there. And Del Bigtree of the Highwire podcast asked for a show of hands, how many people have vaccine abused children? And 100 hands went up. And suddenly I had this epiphany. Oh, this is the soul and the heart of the Maha movement. It is people who have been deplatformed, censored, made fun of, suggested to get vaccines as the regular medical protocol, like the slide we saw earlier today, and they've not had a voice. They've been in the ashes, banished to the corners of the room, no seat at the table, no conversation, and suddenly somebody cares and somebody's listening. So the problem is, as we've listened, like to the previous panel, and heard about these awful, terrible cases that rip your heart out about difficulties, I'm reminded that the only way a society has enough capacity, enough wiggle room to deal with these most heartbreaking cases is if most of us are healthy. When more than half of the 77%, I think I'm right on this. Maybe I'm over that. I get percentages, they all get messed. No, I think it's like 88, 82%. Anyway, huge percentage of young people of military age can't pass to get into the military. Now, I'm not saying everybody should be a soldier, but I am saying that a society in which over 80% of its young people can't join the military to defend their communities, to defend their culture, that's serious. And so, if we're ever going to have enough capacity as a culture to deal with the truly difficult cases, we have to, as a culture, move these trajectories to a place of health where we're only dealing with 3 or 4%. We can't be having 24 out of every 1,000 babies being an autistic. So here are some ideas I'd like to just share with you. Number one, there's going to be 5. They're all P's, properly alliterated for a good sermon. All right. The first one is participation. Participation. Here are things. You can't have an authentic food system and be as profoundly disengaged as the average American is from food. Many of you, I'm sure, remember the blockbuster movie documentary Food Inc. And remember that family at the end that went to the Burger King and they got, this 84-ounce soft drink and a Biggie fries and a hamburger, and then they went to the store and said, well, we can't afford to buy produce because we don't have any money. I remember well at the time that thinking, well, you could buy 2 whole pounds of our world-class grass-finished ground beef for less than the price of that meal, but you have to cook it. Oh. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when you couldn't go to the supermarket and buy a boneless, skinless breast. Chicken. If you wanted boneless, skinless breast, you went and bought a chicken, you took it home on a cutting board with a knife. You know what those are, a knife? And you cut the breast out and you fixed your boneless, skinless breast, and you took the rest of the chicken and you put it in for casseroles or soup or whatever. That was what was done. Today, it chagrins me to say that half of our customers don't know that a chicken has bones. I mean, they think we go out to the skinless, boneless tree and pick them off like, pears or something. You cannot have an integrity credible food system when people are this ignorant about food. About the game of life, about the game of kitchen. And so the first line of defense when we start talking about societal health is domestic culinary arts. Our kitchens have to be sexy again. They've got to be a place, they've got to be a hub of home-centric authenticity. We have to learn how to cook again. And it's never been easier. No time in human history have our kitchens been more gadgetized with techno-sophisticated things. I mean, we got Instapots and crock pots and time bake, and you don't have to run to the spring with a wooden bucket to get water anymore. You don't have to get up at 4 o'clock, to start a wood fire so the wood stove is hot enough to scramble eggs and fix bacon when Pa comes in from milking the cow. It's never been easier. But we've never more profoundly abdicated our participatory responsibility in the game of the foundations of life. We have been able, through convenience and through Lunchables and Hot Pockets and all these convenience things, we have been able to leave this historic relationship and a participatory relationship with food. We have chosen food that is not nutritious, but shippable. For several decades now, we haven't been selecting tomato cultivars for taste and nutritional quality. We've been selecting them for the ones that can bounce around in the back of a tractor trailer from California to Tennessee in January. And when that's what you're selecting for, what do you get? Cardboard. And then we wonder why our kids don't want to eat vegetables. Because they taste like cardboard. Okay? And so we have to start thinking about how do we participate. So imagine if our doctors ran contests for their patients on social media to offer a prize for whoever created the best seasonal recipe of the month for all their patients to enjoy? How about we give a doctor's visit discount for scratch cooking? You know, we run a formal apprentice program. Teresa, my wife, was a college home ec major. Okay, I mean, man, she is a wizard in the kitchen. She can sew anything, cook anything. You know, we can 800 quarts of stuff. I mean, we don't go to this. Listen, if we could grow Kleenex and toilet paper, we could pretty much pull the plug on society. Okay, and she has to teach these 20-year-old, 21-year-old, 22-year-old young people how to set a table. They've never set a table before. I mean, we're turning into barbarians. You know, how about offering gardening tips when somebody comes sitting instead of reading People magazine and the latest breakup with the royal family in the waiting room, how about we give them magazines with gardening tips on how to garden and produce their own food? We could network with church kitchens for culinary classes. They're totally underutilized. How about we take all the hospital grounds, all that the landscape crew is out there mowing, and we turn it into food production. Beautiful gardens with livestock and grazing and chickens, and every hospital should have a chicken house next to the dining services so the kitchen scraps come out into the chickens. Listen, greeny weeny earth muffin environmentalism is not, oh, now we're taking this to a composting facility, you know, so we can grow inedible rose bushes around the hospital entrance. No, it's, you know, it's the chicken should be right up against the dining services. The kitchen scraps come out, go into the chickens, the eggs go right in, and now you don't have to buy eggs from anywhere, and you close the cycle. This is historically normal. The fact that we have been able to segregate these historical close cycles is simply a product of our own cheap energy. Back before we had cheap energy and mechanization, you couldn't break up these intricate symbiotic and synergistic integrated systems and cycles because it was too laborious to transport everything. And so linking all this up, how about the number one thing that I see as a benchmark for people who get it is eating leftovers. How many times have you eaten leftovers this week? Because if you're eating leftovers, it means you probably cooked and ate together as a group. You had leftovers, and now we're eating leftovers. You know, nobody should buy lunch at a fast food joint. How about we start an initiative? Let's eliminate buying lunches when you're in your workplace, and you're going to pack a lunch. Remember when we used to do that? And we took lunch. We didn't go out and buy lunch, and I don't have a hatred of restaurants and things like that, but these are, when we talk about economics, I'm sitting here, I'm listening. I want to go to the household. I'm going to say something that's very politically incorrect. The household that can't afford to fix a flat tire. Here's what I'm not going to find in that household. I'm not going to find Coca-Cola. Am I? I'm not going to find tobacco. I'm not going to find alcohol. I'm not going to find coffee. I'm not going to find fast food takeout. I'm not going to find lottery tickets. I'm not going to find Netflix. I'm not going to find large screen, flat screen TVs. I'm not going to find potato chips. I'm not going to find Cheerios at breakfast cereal. I mean, I can go on this list. I did this up at George Mason University one time. I had this bunch of kids, I said, can anybody here think of things that people buy that they don't need? We're talking about this. Don't do this on a college campus. The first guy raises his hand and says, underwear. No, not underwear, okay? Don't do this at a college campus. But you and I know that I don't know what the percentage, and I know it's politically incorrect to say so, But in this country of abundance and opportunity, there's almost no reason for poverty. And when people, I get it all the time, well, I can't afford your chicken. You know, it's too expensive. Listen, all you have to do, you can buy one of my beyond organic, pasture-raised, hormone-free, genetic, GMO-free chicken. I mean, we sell them to the 5-star chefs in D.C. One of our chickens for less per pound than boneless, skinless breast at Walmart. But you got to cook it. You got to deal with bones, which you can turn into broth. Okay? How about we change our child labor laws so that we reinstitute child workers and entrepreneurs? I love the banker here. Sorry, I can't get your name right off the top of my head, but you know this and my LPN guy right here. That we need to provide real life opportunities for young people to interact with the adult workforce and I'm a big believer that every child between 8 and 10 should have their own business. Every child. 8, they're old enough to kind of know money. You know, an 8-year-old would rather have $1 than a quarter. A 5-year-old wouldn't. They'd rather have a quarter than $1 because it's shiny, okay? But at 8, no, I want the dollar, not the quarter, okay? And after about 10 or 11, then they get a little bit ishy-gishy on, peer dependency. And my favorite story is my little granddaughter. She was about, this years ago, she was about 5 or 6. We were having a chicken pickup day. We had all these customers coming. So she went out in the field and, unbeknownst to us, it was totally a surprise. She went out and picked this bouquet of wildflowers. She comes into the sales building. There's these customers all standing around, and she looks around and she picks this handsome young guy standing there. She walks up to him with this bouquet of wildflowers. She says, I picked these wildflowers, and I'm sure your wife would really like a bouquet of flowers, and I'm selling them for $1. And you know what was really funny? And she just came in like this. None of us that were working, we didn't have any idea this was anything that was going on until she walked in and did her little pitch. What was hilarious was she didn't wait for an answer. She was ready with plan B. But if you don't have a wife, I know you know a lady who would love to have a bouquet. I mean, she was not going to take no for an answer, At 12, you'd never do that. Okay? We think there's this magic time between 8 and 11 where every child should be working, should be doing something, because let me tell you, and we've heard about it all day today, bullying, lack of self-esteem, all this stuff. I'm not a psychologist, but let me tell you, in my experience, and I've been around a little while and do a lot of stuff with young people, I believe self-worth comes from successfully accomplishing meaningful tasks. Self-worth comes from successfully accomplishing meaningful tasks. It doesn't come from being the top points getter on Angry Birds. And it doesn't do any good to say, Tommy, you're a good little boy, Janie, you're a good little girl. Because the obvious question is, okay, well, I'm good. Well, good for what? And in our culture, we have so marginalized and demonized child labor. We have abused our young people by refusing to let them interact meaningfully with an adult world. And then we wonder why they can't cope. So if we want to deal with something with policy, let's get rid of all child labor laws. Nobody's going to exploit children. If they do, they're going to be so few, it's not even a big deal. Okay? And any kid can work for anybody, and there's no minimum wage, and there's no FICA withholding. Any kid under 18 can work with no strings attached whatsoever. It's a voluntary choice. My goodness, we live in a choice society. We've got choice in the bedroom, choice in the bathroom, choice in the womb, but we don't have choice in a workplace. We don't have choice in the kitchen. We don't have choice in the food. The food bank can't even give away food that isn't government inspected. That's a crime. So we need to create freedom and liberty in the system. All right, that's participation. Number two, provenance. Provenance. Michelle Obama started this very well. Know your farmer, know your... Yeah, didn't that make it to Tennessee? All right. Maybe it didn't make it to Tennessee. Know your farmer, know your food. Okay? Yeah. This is not an endorsement of the Obamas, okay? I'm just saying she was right on this. She had a White House garden, and we got to go up and have dinner with the chef up there, and they had a real problem. You know, they couldn't buy from a farm because it was too, the Secret Service wouldn't let them buy from a farm. They had to buy from Cisco and big outfits where the food was homogeneous and nobody knew where it was going. They couldn't buy food from where they knew it was going. It was just one of those sidelights. So the province, do you know your source? Do you know if the farm you buy from, is it building fertility with carbon and compost or with chemicals? Do you know that? Do you know if it grows soil? Do you know if its animals are moving around on pasture or are they confined in fecal particulate, pathogen, toxin-loving environments? You know, your provenance should build soil. It should increase hydration. You know, is it depleting the aquifer through irrigation, or is it increasing hydration through pond building? Irrigation is okay, but it should only be surface runoff. I could talk for a whole day just about that. Does your farm increase species diversity? You know, we participated in a Smithsonian working landscape study a couple of years ago. It was a 2-year study, and they did 29 farm working landscapes in Virginia. We were the only one that they found all 8 known varieties of bumblebees in Virginia. All 8. And you know, pollinators are the canary in the mine when it comes to, you know, overall ecological health. As the pollinators go, so goes everything else. And so we were real excited with all those bumblebees. But, you know, is our provenance coming from genetically modified organisms? Are our animals unvaccinated or vaccinated? You know, what does the farm look like where we're going? And so if I move this to a practical application, provenance, well, when we're running a doctor's office, do we give the kids a sucker when they come, or a stick of good hormone-free beef jerky as they leave? And no, cow burps and farts are not destroying the planet. How about when they come to the doctor's office or the school, they leave with a list of local food providers and coupons? See, Michael was lamenting to me the fact that farmers didn't come to this. You know why farmers didn't come to this? Because they don't see doctors as their friend. When's the last time the doctor went out and visited a couple of farmers and said, tell you what, could we run a coupon campaign? I'll make sure that all my patients are referred to you. I mean, we actually, our local hospital began referring all their heart patients to us as part of their exit strategy, because the dietitian used the hospital kitchen to run a bunch of tests on chicken and beef and pork and different things, and found out how much off the charts ours was better. And so when she created her dietary plans for exiting heart patients, she prescribed our meats to the exiting heart patients. Okay, doctors. A lot of this is like, who blinks first? Do doctors wait for farmers to come and take them playing golf, or do farmers go out, or do doctors go out and court a farmer Have you courted a farmer? I'm going to lay down some challenges here, okay? Because it's the temptation for all of us, isn't it, to wait for the other guy to make the move. You know, it's so easy to go, well, if those people would just do that, and if those guys just do that. And we don't initiate, see, the change we want to see. So if we want our patients to eat better, you know, let's get them to eat better. Let's work up deals with local farmers. We actually did a Love on Quacks summit at our farm a couple of years ago, where all of the alternative, unorthodox, you know, the naturopaths, homeopaths, functionals, chiropractors, acupuncture, iridologists, you know, herbalists, all the quacks. We said, come to the farm. You got it. The Quack Summit, all the quacks, all right? So they all came to the farm and said, we just want to come and love on you. And they met each other because it's lonely out there when you start going down an alternative path that insurance companies don't endorse and that healthcare plans don't endorse and Medicare doesn't endorse and Anthony Fauci doesn't endorse. It's a lonely path. And so we reached out to the alternative health community and said, come. We'll feed you, we'll love on you, and we'll just tell you how much we love you all day. And then, how about we have field trips to local farms? You know, that sounds like a good idea to me, instead of field trips to, you know, Disney. All right. Number 3, proximity. Proximity. The closer you are to your food source, the better. The closer you are, the better. The shorter the chain of custody, the better. And our proximate food chain needs to be completely rebuilt. We saw it completely fray in 2020, didn't we? Let me ask you a question. If instead of our country having 500 mega 5,000 employee processing facilities to funnel all our food into, you know, our beef, pork, chicken, tomatoes, and peaches and everything, and jams and jellies, okay? If instead of having 500 mega processing facilities to funnel all our food into that eventually ends up in, you know, Piggly Wiggly and Kroger's and Costco and Walmart, if instead we had 50,000 neighborhood community abattoirs and canneries and food processors, would we have had as big a in 2020? That's a rhetorical question. The obvious answer is, of course not. Of course not. And 2020 showed the fragility of long chains and mega processing facilities, centralized, concentrated production, processing, marketing, and distribution. The fewer entities between your farm and plate, the better. So when we look at practical applications, my question is, well, who do you buy from? I can't help it, Michael. Don't be offended, but I couldn't help but seeing the seasonal fruit sign on the table out there to the pineapple. Seasonal fruit. We're in Tennessee in January and seasonal fruit. You know, the wordsmithing and greenwashing and clever speaking, I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, Monsanto's website, their homepage, we are the world's repository of sustainability. Yeah, thank you for laughing. It is laughable. It is. All right. So how do we develop this? You know, well, who do we buy from? Okay. In fact, I would suggest that instead of encouraging supermarkets to buy better, why don't we get our people to quit going to the supermarket? Let's eliminate the supermarket. It wasn't even here before 1946. It's only been here for half a century. We don't need them. Get rid of them. In 1945, the average morsel of food in America traveled 40 miles, average, 40 miles from farm to plate. Today, it travels an average 1,500 miles. Which means it's very dependent on on functional, socioeconomic, and cheap energy policies. How about we stimulate a goal of visiting a farm 3 times a year? Take your recreation dollars, visit a farm. I would like to see an analysis. Here's a good one for the folks that have been up here today. I'd like to see an analysis of the percent of food eaten here in Sevier County that's produced here. I mean, I travel the world, and let me tell you, Tennessee is as productive an area. I mean, it gets rainfall, it has good land, it's not steep, this is good land. A long climate, a long growing season. I mean, this is paradise from an agricultural standpoint in the planet. And yet, I'll bet that not 5% of the food eaten in Sevier County is grown in Sevier County. And I can say that very safely because that's the same percentage in Hawaii. Hawaii! 5% of food eaten in Hawaii is not grown in Hawaii. There is not a beef slaughterhouse in Hawaii where you can raise, the biggest ranch in the U.S. is in Hawaii. The Parker Ranch is the largest ranch in the country. People don't know that, okay? But they can't sell a T-bone steak in Hawaii unless the cows go on a barge to California and get processed in a processing plant, and then the boxes go back to Hawaii. It's nuts. It's nuts. Iowa, breadbasket of the world. 5% of the food eaten in Hawaii isn't grown there. Now, a lot of it is grown there. It exits the state to be turned into, whatever, and then come back in, okay? In Virginia right now, we have something like a $5 million a day negative balance of trade in just beef because we have cow calves, and we export the calves to feedlots in Illinois, Kansas, and Nebraska, and then for $1,000, and import it in a box for $3,000. And just beef alone, we lose $5 million a day, negative balance of trade. Why don't we keep them at home, feed them at home, and sell them at home? Let's keep all that money home and keep these jobs going. Then maybe people won't be so poor. So what we need to do is reduce the impediments to farmer local access. And that's where I encourage a food emancipation proclamation. If I had one piece of advice for Trump and his team and the whole MAHA movement, we need a food emancipation proclamation so a neighbor can make a chicken pot pie and sell it to their neighbor without a bureaucrat in between. Right now, our food system is enslaved and shackled by a plethora of government regulations that preclude entrepreneurial prototypes from being able to access the market. It's not a matter for the Federal Trade Commission to break up the fact that 4 companies control 85% of America's meat supply. I agree, that's pretty monopolistic and oligarchical, but the answer is not Federal Trade Commission, antitrust breakup. The answer is to free up the thousands and thousands of farmers that I enjoy meeting every year around the country that are ready to access their neighbors with homemade sausage and charcuterie and pot pie and quiche, but they can't because they have to have a $250,000, $500,000, $1 million facility to pass government inspection and compliance standards with HACCP plans and everything else in order just to sell one quiche to a neighbor that goes to church with them. Folks, we got to have some freedom in our food system. We got to get the government out of it. School gardens. How about we take all these lawns that you see the zero turns running over in our schools all the time and turn them into food? I was, one of the most cool things I ever saw was a school out in California, and they had it was a middle school program, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, I think it was. And for those 3 years, they had this like 3-acre farm, and every student in the middle school in the county went to that farm half a day a week. And the farm was incorporated into the biology and the science and all this, and it was great. And one of the things that the two ladies that were running the farm did, they had a worm bed. And it was about 8 feet long, 3 feet wide, 3 feet high. It looked like a great big, a coffin for a great big, it looked like a coffin for Shaquille O'Neal, okay? And so they had this big box. And so the kids, I have never seen a child ished about worms. When they see a worm bed, they're just, I'm mesmerized. I mean, it's just amazing. These things are just, it's just amazing. It's like looking at a honeybee hive. The community and everything that's going on in a honeybee hive. Just amazing. All right. So anyway, these kids seen this. So this is an experiment. They said, okay, kids, here's your homework. Next week, bring some food, and we'll see what the worm's like. So the next week, the kids brought Cheerios and Twizzlers and gummy bears and the stuff that kids eat, Snickers bars and all this Lunchables, and they put it all in. And the two farmer ladies, they brought an orange and some ground beef and a pork chop and a piece of celery and an apple. All right, they put it in. Next week, kids come run, they charge up the hill, they open the lid, and they look in, and they pull out the Twizzlers, the gummy bears, the Snickers bars, the Lunchables, all this stuff. And they go over here, and, well, where's the orange? Where's the apple? Where's the steak? Where's the pork chop? Well, it's not there. Well, the obvious question that these two farmer ladies asked the kids was, well, why would you want to eat something worms won't even eat? That's a fair question. Why aren't we doing those kinds of things in our schools? So that kids understand these things. That's, if it won't rot and something won't eat it, it's probably not very good. 4, philosophy. Philosophy. Your health is your responsibility. Wow, that's a new thought. I remember a little bit after Obamacare went in, I was going up to testify at a hearing in Washington, D.C. I get on the metro, and a guy gets on, he's 400 pounds. He's got a 2-pound bag of potato chips. He's got cigarettes in his pocket. He's got a 2-quart drink of, Coke or whatever. And he gets on, he sits across from me, and I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, and I'm responsible for his health? Shortly after that, I was up speaking at a college in Pennsylvania. I had a room full of 300 students, and Q&A came along, and one thing led to another, and I thought, I'm gonna ask these young people something. They're real smart. They're in college. So I told them the story about the guy on the metro, and I said, I want one of you smart young people, Obama lovers. I want you to tell me why I'm responsible for that guy's health. I just want to know why am I responsible for his health? Whole room got quiet. And I've learned in some of these situations, the best thing is just to shut up and let the other side wiggle. So I'm up here like this, I just wait. A minute goes by. That's a long time. 2 minutes go by. Students are getting a little bit, they're kind of looking around, a little bit awkward. 3 minutes go by. I'm just watching, just waiting. Finally, this girl on the front row, she raised her hand. Yes, ma'am. What is it? She said, because your generation made him do it. That's the best our colleges can offer, folks. Now, I was very nice. I didn't debate. I said, I disagree, but that's not the point of this. I just wanted to find out what you smart young people thought. And anybody else got anything to add? Nope, nobody else got anything to add. And we went on with other things. But listen, philosophically, we've got to start teaching in our culture, your health is it's not my responsibility. It's not the government's responsibility. It's not your neighbor's responsibility. It's your responsibility. It's your body, your microbiome. I don't own your microbiome. You're responsible for your mouth and what goes in it. Your health is your responsibility. When you sit down to eat, what kind of worldview does that food represent? Is it biological or mechanical? You know, should food be sterile or microbially active? I mean, you can feed your kid 4 jars of Coca-Cola a day, but boy, 1 teaspoon of raw milk, that's deadly. That'll kill you because it's got stuff running around in it. We're still suffering from Pasteur, the germ theory. So, how do we inject this into the culture? Well, we ask who's responsible for your health. We encourage an opt-out of the system. Yeah, Teresa and I both are supposed to be taking Medicare, but we're not taking it. Why? Because we don't want the government telling us who to go to. So we continue with our Samaritan Ministries alternative sharing healthcare program. Exercise. Sweat out the toxins. Philosophy, compost over chemicals, pasture over confinement. You know, the war in Iraq. So I've been a little bit hard on some of the Democrats here. Let me tell you about the war in Iraq. The war in Iraq that Bush started, one day of that war was enough to double the entire school lunch budget in the entire country for every plate of food given in public schools in the United States, to double it for a year. There is not a problem we have in the world that we lack the knowledge or the resources or the money to fix. Not one. It's priorities. And finally, number 5, projected. Look into the future. Where is your plate? When you eat your food, where is your plate taking you in the future? Is this a plate that is going to hydrate the landscape, increase the bumblebees, increase the biodiversity, increase soil, increase breathable air? Is that what you see when you look through your plate to the physical ecological landscape? And is that a landscape that you want your children to inherit? Or is it a landscape of continued erosion? 700 dead zones in the U.S., the biggest one being the size of Rhode Island in the Gulf of Mexico. Squeezable Velveeta cheese that won't even mold. Factory farming, abused animals, superbugs. Is that the food? No, we want food that will rot. How about, I've been chagrined at the positive aspect of look how much water people are buying. Nobody should buy any water. Quit buying water. Get a water filter. Who wants to put water in plastic bottles? Now we're finding our brains are full of nanoparticles of plastic. Don't ever drink water out of a plastic thing. Get the glass ones back there. They can wash them and reuse them. Don't go in a landfill or turn plastic into your brain. We need solariums on all our buildings. Okay, so we can heat them with passive and we can grow food in the wintertime. All of these things can be done. They're doable. We can do them. We live in a very unusual time. We live in a time where for the first time in human history, we can get water from sources we don't know. We can get power from places we don't know. We can get food from places we don't know. And this has built up an incredible ignorance. Ignorance makes it easy to cheat. It also stimulates fear because we fear what we don't know. And so in our culture now, instead of food being sustenance for us and blessed sustenance, food has become an enemy that we have to solve with Ozempic and a million other issues. And I would suggest that when we talk about connecting, we talk about community, and we talk about personal responsibility, that it's all a network where we link the soil on our farms to the food on our plate and creates a bypass mechanism to our sickness-oriented parasitic health system. It's not really a health system, it's a sickness babysitting system. And I would suggest as we peel off that onion and get down to the foundations, It's time to get to a place where when we open our mouth to our gateway and what goes into our microbiome, it says, oh, I know this food. I know this food. My DNA is familiar with this. It's not familiar with Cheetos. It's not familiar with Doritos and monosodium glutamate. In 1940, America used 1 million pounds of monosodium glutamate. Today, we use 400 million pounds of monosodium glutamate. Monosodium glutamate, our microbiome doesn't know anything. It's like, ah! And so let's start taking that responsibility, and let's do it intentionally, and let's move this in whatever sphere of influence we have into our patients, our students, our communities, so that we all buy into the fact our future is up to me, and what we see 30 years from now will be the culmination of all the trillions of decisions we make between now and then, just like what we see today is a culmination of the decisions our culture's made in our previous time. So now may all of your carrots grow long and straight. May your radishes be large but not pithy. May tomato blossom end rot affect your Monsanto neighbor's tomatoes. May the coyotes be struck blind at your pastured chickens. May all of your culinary experiments be delectably palatable. May the rain fall gently on your fields, the wind be always at your back, your children rise and call you blessed, and may we all make our nest a better place than we inherited. God bless you. Thank you for letting me visit with you. Thank you.